Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anyways, a Deadwood video podcast. Today we are talking about episode 11 of season 1, which is entitled Jules' Boot is Made for Walking, which is a reference to Nancy Sinatra. That's the title of the episode, yeah. It's an insanely strange reference to make on the episode of this show about 1876.
And that's just what she'll do.
That's weirder than last week's episode, Who Framed Mr. Wu?
Yeah. But this episode concerns Jewel and her leg, and also various other things going on in the camp. And I guess we'll just jump right into it.
Sure.
It starts out with Swearengen and Trixie are waking up together, and Al Swearengen is talking about the circumstances of the warrant out from him in Chicago.
Right. And this corrupt magistrate. And she's looking out the window and is, as they are wont to do, pointing out people's comings and goings.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't TV back then.
No. So that's how you find out that Jules is walking out. And, and Al is like, what the fuck?
Where's she going?
We learned that Al stabbed a policeman who tried to shake him down over $35 while he was picking up Dolly. I think we learn a little bit later in the episode there's a prostitute named Dolly.
Okay.
But apparently he went to Chicago to pick up new prostitutes from an orphanage, and a policeman tried to shake him down, and he stabbed him in the belly. And he's like, it's not anybody who didn't need to be, that guy needed to stop drawing breath, or I don't know the exact words, but it's, you know, and again, it's very strange.
Well, does he say that later, though, when he's talking to Adams?
Oh, you're right. He may say that later.
He says that because he's like, not that it matters or something, but the guy didn't need to. Every day he didn't need to draw breath or something like that, and he was like, "Well, that doesn't matter." And he's like, "Good."
Yeah. It strikes me that all these people are comfortable. He just casually tosses off to Trixie, to Adams, to everyone. Oh yeah, I killed a guy, and there's a warrant out for me, and everybody's like, "Yeah, that's
of course, because you fucking kill somebody every goddamn episode."
But like if one of you guys told me, "Oh yeah, there's a warrant out for me in Chicago. I just killed somebody," I would be a little bit on edge.
Yeah.
No one is on edge. I mean, I guess they're used to dealing with Swearengen. I mean, most people. Anyway, we go to Jewel, and Jewel is walking down the street with some difficulty through the mud. She has a messed up leg, and she has to drag it.
And some guy comes up behind her and starts making fun of her, acting like her, and then cuts to her POV and this very bizarre thing with this guy right in the camera and all that. And then we finally see that she makes her way over to Doc
before
Hawkins.
She gets there, she falls in the mud.
Oh, yeah.
And a Chinese woman who is folding laundry just stares at her, and you can't quite see. She doesn't. I would understand from the way the situation of the Chinese people in the camps been portrayed that she wouldn't want to go out of her way to draw attention to herself at all.
But she's the only one who
actually follows her.
Is
a wide shot.
Yes, and is not just like looking at her for a second and being like,
yeah. But she doesn't show compassion either.
No, because I think she can't.
Yeah, I think there's a racial divide that separates them.
Right.
And also, again, to point out, Jewel, the real actress Jerry Jewell, who plays the character Jewel, is really has cerebral palsy, and so she's really acting. Everyone calls her the Gimp, and it's like it must be. I know that from interviews that she loves this show, but it's just like, you know, it must be very challenging to be made fun of for a disability as your character. It must be very weird.
I think a lot of actors in the show could say the same thing.
Right. Well, and I think it's got to be weird for the actors who are told to bully them too. Like I imagine. At least somebody had to have been like walking over, like apologizing profusely beforehand. You know, it's like, look, I know it. I mean, we're all acting here. I just, sorry.
Like, this is 150 years ago.
Yeah,
or whatever.
She arrives at the dock, and he says, "Al is sick for making you walk over to me."
Right.
And she corrects him and says, "No, I came here because it showed you this book about the Civil War."
And she kind of bursts into because he has the door kind of half open, and then she just kind of
just comes in, and
just knocks the door open and goes in. And she's like, "I want to show you this book," and he takes one look at it and is like,
He's like, "I don't want to read about the Civil War. I was
fucking there.
I lived it." Yeah.
This is no interest in this. And then she's like, "No, this could help me walk." And he looks at it and is like. He's talking about how this is made for somebody whose leg was shot up And it's like
She has a congenital defect.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing, this isn't made for you.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I always feel he should say the war between the states. I always feel like Civil War is somehow a modern phrase. I don't know. It probably isn't. But it's just like he's always like, I was in the Civil War. It's like he's saying, I was in World War II.
Yeah.
It's a little bit too modern.
World War One. Yeah.
But
We're about to start World War One.
But yeah, he tells her that the devices won't work. And she also says her reason for being there is because her dragging her leg irritates Al Swearengen.
Right. It's so sad.
And,
Yeah.
Well, it's not sad. It's also just another strike against Swearengen.
Right.
Like, what a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
And even
That's what makes it sad.
the doc kind of calls out, I think, what it is more so than it is genuinely her that agitates him.
Yeah.
Is that he gets in a mood and then he looks for a reason for it.
Right. That's what he points out later
Yeah.
to Al directly.
And she's a reliable place to insult her for not getting coffee, for dragging her leg.
Right. Yeah.
Because
I'm
she's
mad.
not going to say anything.
Yeah.
And he can just, and everybody can just keep going on with their day,
And in his defense, he never visits violence upon her.
That's true.
He seems to. I mean, even as he insults her for not being able to clean up bloodstains a few episodes ago, he doesn't visit violence upon her. We haven't seen him do that yet.
Right.
So there's a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not going to kill her.
You have to find the good things in Al.
All right, then we go to Joni and Charlie Utter in the dining room. And I think they talk about, Charlie Utter is talking about being fire marshal, and Joni is talking about getting her new place.
Did he already went to...
He hasn't gone to Tom Nettles yet.
He hasn't gone to Tom Nettles
He's just
yet.
in the hotel.
That's
Farms
right.
Hotel.
He's just complaining about it, and then she says something about setting up, and
She's like, I have the backing, the financial backing.
and he's like, oh, well, I thought you already had it, and she's like, well, I have one that I can live with now, basically, instead of Psy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not a very wise move on Joni Stubbs' part to
Volunteer
allude to
information.
Eddie Sawyer's robbery.
Yeah, not very smart.
Of a murderous person.
Yeah.
But then let's see. Then we have Sophie and Alma Garrett and Ellsworth are in another corner in the
Right.
hotel.
And he's again telling her like, "Look, I fucking mind, or I don't mind paying creeks." It's like we're getting to the point where all that's gone. And it's like, and now we're gonna have to start dropping shafts and mining. And it's like that's not my thing. And she's like, so you're gonna have to find somebody else. And my part's done. She's like, no, I want you to oversee it. And he's like, oh, all right,
Yeah.
And they admit that they like each other's company and look forward to the breakfast they have together.
And then that's when he says,
It was something, like to the effect of, I just want to say this once. I know I'm too damn old for you.
And what a likable Ellsworth.
He's getting all kind of like blushy and flustered
Right.
because they're enjoying each other's company and complimenting each other. And
then
but he
that's-
wants her to know that, like, I'm not confused about the situation.
right,
You know?
exactly. And then that's when her father comes in, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is like, oh, who's this guy? And that's when Ellsworth gets up and offers his seat and is like, I'll take my fucking plate and coffee and all this shit and
my hat.
and my hat and I'll take my leave of you if that's okay. And then she gives him permission to leave.
He
and then,
sticks his tongue out at Sophia.
Yep. And then her father, what's his name?
Otis Russell.
Otis Russell, yeah.
Yeah, he's her father, but he introduces himself by kissing her on the lips and then
Yes.
telling Ellsworth, "I take a father's
A
liberty."
father's liberty.
Yes.
He's played by Mr. McFeely from Boy Meets World, apparently, a show I have not seen, but everyone knows him as Mr. McFeely from Boy Meets World.
I was trying to place
He
him.
seems
I've never saw Boy Meets World, but he's also in 1776.
Oh,
He's in the musical 1776.
a modern version?
No, it was made
Like
in
the old one?
It was made in the 70s.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Oh,
He's been around a while.
He's Adams.
Oh,
He's John Adams in it.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
well, he's a good actor,
And I
and
was like, man, I fucking remember that voice. It's like,
and I don't remember exactly what he and Alma discuss at breakfast. He makes fun of Ellsworth's manners
Yes.
after he leaves, which
Yes.
is just like, again, I don't see the distinction. Like, why is Ellsworth was polite.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. It was because he stuck his tongue out or because he was so disheveled, maybe?
Yeah, maybe because he
I think-
doesn't have the etiquette.
I think he just doesn't trust anybody in this camp yet. And so he thinks everybody's out to get her. And so he's sussing people out
Yeah.
and trying to see what she thinks about them and all that. And then he's going to weigh against that.
He also,
as a father would,
when he was being introduced to Ellsworth and Sophia, he immediately assumed it's Ellsworth's kid.
Yes. And was like,
but
no,
when
that's
she's
my
in his,
ward.
and he kind of has a look.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, as a father would.
Right. Yeah.
And then after Otis's first scene, we go to Silas Adams, the magistrate's bagman, quoting from the synopsis, and Swearengen at the gym. And they are discussing the magistrate Claggett. And,
yes, and how much of a piece of shit he is.
Yeah, and Swearengen is like, don't send him any of the bribes.
Yep.
Tell him to fuck himself.
Yep.
And
he's
then,
like, so that's the message you want me to send him? And he's like, roundabout or something, whatever he says. It's like thereabouts or something.
Wait, was that this episode or last episode?
No, that's this episode.
Okay, I'm thinking of when he...
A little bit later in this episode, they reach an understanding.
Okay, I'm thinking of the first or last episode when
he was
like, "Is that the message you want me to send?"
He got hot in that last episode, and this time it's more of like
he gave him like a deadline or something.
Yeah,
and he points out also that the magistrate is planning to earn on the warrant. No one else cares or knows about it.
Right.
So he's like, everybody else believes in Yankton that you are the person to deal with in Deadwood.
Exactly.
So he gives Al an opening to
Basically,
say,
this information is isolated to this one person.
We can
squash that.
We could squash this.
and either here or later, Al says, he's not just an asshole to me. He's probably an asshole to you.
And
so,
he kind of acknowledges it. He's a fucking asshole, and everybody knows it.
Yeah. And this synopsis jumps ahead to their later scene, but we'll skip. And then we'll go back, I think, to Alma and her father in the room where Alma shows him a giant piece of gold.
And he gets his room key, gives Sophia still would today. He gives Sophia the money to give to
the person,
the person at the door, and then he comes back in and is like, does that old trick of like, you clean behind your ears. He pulls out a coin and gives her a coin, and
Alma watches him suspiciously.
yes,
all that very surface level, cute, good with kids stuff.
And then Sophia comes over to Alma and shows her the coin, and Alma's like, yeah,
I see it,
and has kind of like a little bit of a worried look on her face,
Yeah.
which is kind of strange.
Yeah, and then Otis mentions that she's been reading books about Wild Bill since she was a child.
Right, her
relationship
with the Wild
him,
Bill, when they were
13 years ago.
13 years ago,
yeah.
And
Which I like that because
Yes.
that gives some context to Alma.
Right.
Like now I'm thinking about all her interactions with him, in a different way.
Right.
It's not just like, there's this rapscallion, this person.
Right, she's been reading about this character
She
her whole
probably
life.
is secretly kind of geeking out.
Right.
That he's there, but
And,
she won't let
and
that.
that they got to have an interaction, although it was over her dead husband.
Right.
And so that kind of cuts it a little bit for
yeah.
her. Well, the fact that
starstruck quality is probably mired by the fact that
her
they're
husband
meeting
was
over
just
such
murdered.
Awful terms.
Remember,
okay.
because she employs
Okay,
Bill to do the thing and all that stuff, and then
Sorry. I
it
was
cuts some of the excitement or whatever.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And then Otis in the scene, he says a lot of things that are kind of witty, and he makes references to his money.
Yeah.
And how I think to her marriage, doesn't he make references to her marriage and money?
And then also kind of is like, other people are thinking that you murdered
Right.
Brom,
Which kind of feels shitty of him to
even mention.
But he
Right.
apologizes immediately.
right,
so-
but it feels
he
like what
keeps
are
doing
you
that.
getting at?
He keeps doing that throughout the
Yeah,
episode. He'll bring something up that's pretty shitty, and then immediately backtrack and be like, no,
Right, yeah.
Well, I mean, I just said it. It's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
Don't mind me. I'm
And
just
he
an
has
old
his,
dad.
His cigar, and he just his little hat.
Yeah.
And we'll get more into him. He has a dinner scene. We should
Yes.
wait. Let's see. Charlie Utter is the fire commissioner now, and he's giving Tom Nuttall a hard time.
Right, he goes to Tom Nuttall's and is like, look at this fucking stovepipe. It's sitting right on this goddamn wood in
Right.
the wall. It's going to fucking catch fire, you dumb shit.
What's funny too is like he's not giving him a hard time. It's
No.
the most reasonable thing in the world.
Exactly.
To draw someone's
Yeah,
attention to that.
exactly. It's
but
like-
people who don't like that kind of that's
Government
like
interference.
such a thing though. I mean, even restaurants and things too. It's
Sure.
like not sanitary. And
Yeah.
it's like, just take care of stuff.
Exactly.
Like, you serve people.
This is reasonable. We don't want the entire town, which is made out of wood,
yeah.
to go up like a fucking tinderbox.
I don't feel like I'm badgering you or pestering you unjustly.
This is the very minimum he's asking you to do. It's just put some sheet metal around the wood.
I just gotta disagree. Like Tom Nuttall says, well, maybe I should move on, just like I did with Wilkes Barre.
Yeah.
It's like he left another town because he had too much,
Because they asked him
because
to
he
put
can't be
pieces-
bothered to do it right.
one little thing.
That's why you go to the middle of nowhere in a lawless
Right.
town.
So you can burn
don't
the whole
have to have
town
health
down.
commissioners and fire safety.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And
I get it.
But and also Charlie Utter, as he earlier was in a very bad mood at the, I think maybe this episode or last episode at the Grand Hotel where he was
Somebody
pushing people
stepped on his foot
online.
or something.
Yeah.
Like here, he's just like at the end he says, this isn't the Armageddon, or this isn't the end of days.
Yeah,
or something.
exactly. This is the end of
But
days.
his whole tone is just like, look at this place. It's just so horrible.
Yeah.
And it's like if he just took a different tone,
Yeah,
it would have
But
sold it better.
But I think we've got the impression that he's already done this several times now with
yeah.
several other businesses, and this
Right.
is this is
what
like,
runs him out of town every time is that he won't obey health inspections or whatever.
well, but I meant like Charlie.
Oh.
Like Charlie's, like he makes reference in that
Like he's
first
been around
scene.
town
like
all
he's
day.
already been doing this all day,
and people are violating.
and he's probably mentioned it a little bit nicer before. It's that
This
it's
is
that,
like the end of his shift.
it's that customer service thing where it's like when by the time you've had the 30th conversation, that's the exact same conversation. It's like just fucking do it. It's like that's all you
Yeah.
got to do. It's like this is like $1 worth of
Right.
10 or something. You got to put around this thing and nail it into place.
Right. Well, and also, yeah. It's like he says, everyone's butted up against each other.
Exactly. The whole town goes
One
up.
place catches fire.
Yeah.
Everybody loses everything.
Yeah, all because you didn't want to do this one little
just
thing.
Take care of it.
Yeah.
That's I'm not the bad guy here. I'm not trying to break your balls.
And I'm also not asking you to rebuild the whole building. I'm
Yeah.
saying put one little thing around this pipe and you're good.
right. Yeah. It's like, and I was at the same meeting you were at. Okay?
Exactly,
I got this
exactly.
got doled out to me,
Exactly.
and I'm just doing it right.
But again, it's just like in the context, it seems like Tom Nuttall is such a friendly character.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like all he had to do was deliver it a little sweeter, and he would have had a different result. But because he didn't deliver it sweeter, Con Stapleton, who was at the table when while Bill was like, who's a great I forget the actor's name, but
Yeah.
he's so good, and he's in a bunch
good.
of stuff, and he looks like the fox from Pinocchio. He has this cool top hat, and he comes up, and he's like, and he has this very common in Deadwood roundabout way of saying like, you could hire a sheriff who might do what you want,
Yeah.
and who would police Swearengen. He goes through this whole thing about the way to make him feel better about having to put sheet iron on his stovepipes is.
Right. I love too that like one of the things he says to soothe him is maybe go to a fire commissioner and tell him to go fuck himself or something like that. Or like basically I'm gonna stop them from interfering with your business. And
Right.
and me as a person outside of the situation,
Right.
I'm going, but that wouldn't solve anything.
No one solved anything at all.
Like we don't need people to a sheriff to intervene in other people's jobs.
And see, during that whole conversation, because everybody's so coy most of the time when they're talking to each
Oh,
other,
yeah.
it's like I don't know what he's until he gets to the very end of his point. I'm like,
What the fuck is
Oh, he wants to be sheriff.
Is he saying that Tom should be the sheriff? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What is he saying?
They start a sentence. They have some clauses that describe the subject. They never get to the verb. They add in all these phrases, and then
Right.
and they're just like you struggle to follow what the conversation is about. You
Yeah.
need to know what the conversation is about before you begin to parse.
It's like a
it.
paragraph of qualifiers.
There's another part in this episode later with Al where he's saying something. Remember, and I like turned to you guys and I was like, it's like it's so dense.
I thought you said tense.
No, it's so dense.
Everything
Like,
you
I
just
couldn't-
said was like-
I was like, I can't understand what he's talking about. Is like
Yeah.
because he's talking so fast and just cramming so much. I think it was when he was talking to Bullock.
And it's
Later
such a
in the
roundabout
episode.
thing. Oh yeah, what was he?
I can't even fucking remember. We'll get to it.
We'll
But
get to it.
anyway, I mean, like it's, yeah. I mean, that happens a lot in this show to where like I'm glad that we talk about it afterwards because honestly, sometimes
Helps you
I don't know what
unpack.
the fuck it
Yeah.
meant. Sometimes just yeah.
And and there's an argument from like George Orwell said like the purpose of language is clarity, and this show goes against the idea. It's more like the purpose of this language is it's really pretty to
Yes.
listen to, and then you hear these cuss words in it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that somehow makes it less I don't know,
refined
or less full of itself,
yes.
less pompous
yes.
as art.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like it helps you wash it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next scene is Leon, the junkie, returns, having not been drowned in a bathtub, to Cy Tolliver.
And then he sits at this really long table, like far away from Cy, and they have this conversation where he's like, tell me everything that happened. He's like, well, surely you've already heard what happened. And he's like, yeah, but I want you to tell me what happened. And he recounts events very quickly and succinctly, which is bizarre for the show. And then, he says like probably like 15 words and wraps up everything that happened in the last episode. And then he's like, okay, well, there's nothing else that happened. And he's like, well, I mean, if you maybe ask me more questions, maybe I'd
provide more details.
Provide more details
or specifics, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's a really wonderful moment that got a laugh. I remember where he says, is that your opinion? And he's leading him to somewhere he doesn't follow. And he's like, yes.
Because he's talking to him about Jimmy Irons getting
Rest in peace.
getting killed in the bathtub next to him, and even references his eye and is like, how can you see a little bit better? He's like, yeah, I see a little bit better out of this eye now. And then
how he was like having trouble like staying on the path of what Cy's trying to lead him to.
I guess so. But throughout the course of this scene, you start to realize like he wants Leon to his new job
is expressing your fucking opinion.
Expressing your fucking opinion about your friend getting
murdered by
Mr. Wu, a Chinese man.
Yeah.
And how unfair that is. Although he doesn't come out and say that directly.
Right, yeah. He pushed him into saying that
and then,
so that then he could...
And then he says, that's your opinion. or something. Yeah. And it's like... And he's like, well, good. Yeah, I guess it is. You know, it's like,
and again, it's like...
No, that's your new job. Express your opinion.
I loved...
I wish you got drowned in that tub.
It's just like... Jimmy Irons was so cool, and Leon is such a jerk that it's hard having to go back to Leon and just have him like being out in the world, not being murdered. But
so you want Leon to be murdered?
I don't want Leon to be murdered. The actor Larry Cedar is on Community as like Pierce's dad. I think he's Larry Cedar is a really respected like LA actor, and he's in a bunch of movies going back to the 80s.
Yeah,
Pierce's dad.
I think
like in the past or something.
I think he's the dude. Is he the dude with like he has fake hair? Yeah, I think it's Pierce's dad. I'll check on a break.
Okay.
And then Chad, edit this out. But I don't.
Leon is Chevy Chase's dad.
Leon, yeah. Okay, so at the hardware store, Trixie visits Saul and offers a free fuck, and he says, "Why would you phrase it like that?"
Yeah.
It's like, I wanted to court you.
Right.
Not fuck you, basically.
Yeah.
And then he goes over and locks the door and then fucks her.
Well, she tries to put it in a better way.
Yeah.
My cherry is obstructing my work. Will you please take it from me for free?
Yes.
It's
a very strange way to put it because it's like, this specific cherry? Like, it's like,
right,
what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like a very romantic moment. I think the music swells.
It does.
They're over in the corner.
And then Saul does.
And then fucking Bullock just comes in, and they have to stop and have to act like, Dad,
he's a bro
Dad
about
walked
it,
in
though.
Or something. He does. He walks in
for a minute.
Yeah.
And then,
but he's so awkward that he still has to pick up. He's
something.
so prim.
Yeah.
He picks up a strange measuring tool.
Yeah.
And just turns. And
it's like, I'll lock up.
Couldn't he just acknowledge like you guys are having sex?
He could have just opened the door, looked in, saw that, and then goes. And then close the door.
Well, he was already in when he looked over.
Yeah.
He came in and walked across the room.
Yeah, that's true.
So he had to make an excuse to leave.
But regardless, Saul and Trixie have a romantic moment where they're like, it's kind of cute that Trixie is like, her job is sex work.
Right.
But she comes to Star and she asks him not
on
to
her
kiss
day
her.
off.
Right.
Yeah. And she asks no kisses on the mouth, and he's like, no.
I want to kiss you. I want to kiss you.
And and it's sweet. It's like it's very sweet. And he's like he's a very nerdy character.
Right.
And she's like this very intense character. And
right.
He's also got like the most points in diplomacy.
Yes.
And so like he
his roles always work out.
Yeah. He's a natural 20 in that. But yeah, So I don't know what I'm talking about, so that probably outed me as like a fake nerd or whatever. but yeah, because like even with Merrick, anytime people are dealing with people that are annoying, he's always the one to come in and shake hands and say that sounds great, and
then leave.
But yeah, he's always pleasant.
Right.
He always looks good because next to Bullock, he's not getting homicidally mad.
Right. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
All right. So Bullock goes over.
Good for them.
Yeah. Bullock goes over to the gym where. Actually, no. First, we need to talk about Tom Nuttall is asking Swearengen if he if Con Stapleton can become sheriff.
Yeah.
When Al offers him a drink.
Oh my God.
And he's like, no.
That shot.
Well, yeah, I will have
that
one.
shot where it's like behind the desk, and then like in the like lower left third is he's pulling the bottle out, like he's pulling the bottle out like this, and then he's got it about halfway up, and he's like, no, I don't want, and he starts putting it back in the drawer. It's almost in the drawer. He's like, oh yeah, come on.
Yeah. He's so nervous.
And he says, I feel like the camp's getting away from me. And for the first time, I think you get a real sense that he and Al are kind of friends.
Yeah, because he talks about Al coming in the first time, in which you finally realize that Tom was there before Al, and how he
came over to Al's tent.
And he was offering nickel whiskey and quarter
booze,
quarter touches or something, 50 cent touches or something.
Yeah.
And
which are getting acquainted prices.
Those were just getting acquainted prices, and
like the nostalgia when he said that.
Yeah. And then
2 months ago.
2 months ago.
Those were the days.
And then he also says something about Dan.
Well, he says that if Tom didn't approve of Al's tent, he was going to pull his knife, but then he saw Dan.
Yeah.
So the implication is that Dan threatened to kill Tom.
Right.
And they're just like, that's old. That's
water under the bridge.
Yeah,
though.
Totally water under the bridge now.
What's his name? The guy who wants to be sheriff again?
Con Stapleton.
Con Stapleton. Even he mentioned, before they went over there that, Al hates my guts because he's not a fellow. Like you and him are close because he considers you a fellow pioneer.
Right.
So that's the first sense that we get that Tom's been around.
Yeah.
But Al hates Con Stapleton and says offhand that he can be bought for 2 loaves of bread.
And Stapleton had already said in that previous conversation that Al hates my fucking guts, so you had to put in a good word for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Al just like keeps humoring very nicely. Again, Al is always switching back and forth between very murderous and very likable. And you expect him to be horrible to Tom, but he's like, yeah, sure, you can.
That's fine, I guess.
You can have him sworn in over here. That's fine.
Yeah, well, that takes some arm bending.
He's like, yeah.
He's like,
no, why?
What?
He said he doesn't have anything over you that Dan's knife can't or
can't solve or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, no. I just, he's a.
I feel like I know him.
I feel like he's a friend.
Yeah, a familiar face.
Yeah, and then that's when he's like, can you be sworn in over here? That way he knows there's no bad blood between you. It's like, and he finally gives in and is like, yeah, but I ain't gonna fucking be there. It's like
expect me to attend.
Yeah,
which is weird because Tom Nuttall later points out that Swearengen is like there and wonders like why can't he come down?
Well, somebody else says it.
Well, I think he's putting on a show for Stapleton to be like, so he'd be like, oh, I don't know why he isn't here. He should be. It must be for a good reason that he's not here.
Yeah.
It's like
the reason is unclear.
we're clear. The reason's unclear, right?
Yeah. And another interesting historical fact, Con Stapleton was really the sheriff for a time of Deadwood, and he also was a wrestling promoter in Deadwood.
Huh.
He staged
looks like a wrestling promoter.
Yeah.
Wrestling matches in Deadwood.
I'm just imagining like a poster of 2 guys doing like the...
Yeah. Dukes up.
Yeah, even though it's not wrestling. Like, just get greased up and...
Yeah.
Let's see. And then Bullock arrives.
Bullock arrives right after.
And he learns that Stapleton's been sworn in, and he goes up to talk to Al.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is where this very convoluted conversation happens that you might have to fill me in on.
What was the...
What, him and Bullock were talking
Him and
about?
Bullock were talking about something.
He was... Bullock was... Or Swearengen was watching the preacher talk about circumcision.
Oh,
the
that's
bull.
right. I forgot about. That happens in between those two things. He's preaching to those bulls' penises.
Yeah.
And walking around and has lost his goddamn mind completely.
Well, the scripture that he's talking about is something like, if you are
About
uncircumcised,
castration.
if you're uncircumcised, you're
circumcision.
not pleasing God. But perhaps if you do the things that would please God, He would forgive your not being circumcised.
To these ox.
Yeah, to these ox's penises.
Yes.
He's looking at their penises and talking about circumcision and thinking about it. But basically he's saying God would forgive you for being unclean or not following practices of Scripture.
Right.
And conversely, if you are circumcised and you do something that displeases Him, it's the same as uncircumcision or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like
Oh,
that.
and also there's a scene where Andy Cremid goes to visit him at the pest tents,
right,
which are being
right.
taken down.
Yeah.
Not mentioned in the HBO synopsis, but it was
That is weird. Why isn't that mentioned in there?
because they fell down at their job. They're so specific. But there's a wonderful scene where Andy's like, I went to different towns and I fell at dice, and so he keeps gambling. So he wants to come back and help the pest tents.
Right.
And then he tries to get some.
And they're being burned.
Yeah. Oh, they're being burned.
They're burning them too.
I didn't notice that.
They're taking the stuff out, like the
just
and they're burning
for
everything.
sanitation.
Yeah,
sake.
it's like just to be sure, let's
not
let's
any
burn all this shit.
residue on this,
which is even worse. It's like it's not only is it being taken down, but everything that he was just a part of that was the only thing that he felt like right
doing some
about
good.
recently
Yeah.
was like it's being burned in front of him.
And then, I mean, for Smith and Andy wants to he wants to do some help.
Exactly, and the
Some
Reverend's
good.
sitting there too, kind of in the same boat where he's like, "This is the only thing that was giving me any joy recently was I was helping people."
I had a function and a role.
Right in this
Yeah.
camp, which I don't seem to have a function in other than when people die.
He's leaning against like a wooden thing that says quarantine.
Yes.
And his face is half in shadow.
Yes.
And and then Andy is slowly catching on that maybe something's not right with this reverend.
And he keeps asking him that. It's like, you're not well?
Yeah.
It's-
And
How are you?
There's this
As you see.
There's this wonderful thing where Andy's voice goes more frog-like,
Mm-hmm.
where he just like gets a deeper voice, and he starts to be more open with. Once he learns the Reverend's not well, he opens up like about his gambling addiction or something.
right.
And the Reverend, he tries to get the Reverend to reassure him and lead him in prayer.
Right.
And the Reverend has this prayer, which is
my
like,
God.
allow me to love and not be loved, allow me to give and not receive, and I forget the rest. And he just walks away.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't even realize where he is for a second, and then he just walks away.
And
Andy just watches him go.
I think too, Andy's kind of not taking advantage, but he needs like a confessional moment, you know, for his own comfort.
And unfortunately, the
and
preacher
we're thinking
can't give it to him.
you know, I know you got gambling problems, but this dude's
Exactly.
clearly not in a state of mind to help you.
No.
You know, he needs help.
Yeah, he can't even fucking get around.
You know.
He doesn't even know where the hell he is.
I know you're not feeling too real well, Reverend, but can I get some stuff off my chest? You know, it's kind of like what I take away from it.
But that's also kind of what he's talking about in that thing that he can't remember. Is like give me the power to love and not be loved, and he's trying to do it in that moment, but he can't do it because his brain's fucked
and
up.
then he just wanders off.
Yeah, then he just wanders off.
Yeah,
because he can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And then he's talking to
good
the oxen about circumcision.
Yeah.
And then above him are Bullock and Swearengen. And they're talking about how untrustworthy. Bullock is angry that Swearengen is agreed to Con Stapleton being sheriff.
Yes.
And then so Swearengen's like, you would be a good sheriff. And Bullock backtracks.
Because you care about stuff like that, basically.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bullock just backtracks and is like, no, I'm only over here because my partner is having sex with that whore.
Oh, that was the thing that you got confused by, was when he was talking about he like sat Bullock down and tried to explain the law to him, and that's when he was explaining the whole thing that's going on with him and the magistrate.
Okay.
And he said, all this is going on, I'm paying him $5,000. Well, then he sends me back a thing that says that needs company.
Yeah.
That $5,000 needs company.
It needs okay.
And then he like gets a drink out and he says, the law. like that's
That's the actual law.
And Bullock says, though it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, and
And
that's
Al says, you believe the law can be honest.
you're one of these people who thinks the law can be honest.
Yep.
Yeah. But, you know, they both have good points.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Bullock drops a huge bomb on Swearengen.
Right.
And he goes outside, as leaving, just almost a buddy thing. It's strange that Bullock is just hanging out, and he very awkwardly says, congratulations, Con Stapleton, on being sheriff, and walks away. But Swearengen, meanwhile, is on the balcony tearing up and staring at.
Is
The
watching the Reverend continue to preach.
That's been eating away at him for like a couple episodes.
Right, and he's just like, what? And the weirdest thing happens in that moment where you see Bullock look at the preacher and then just keep walking.
Well, we see him. He stops for a second. You see that cool measuring device in his hand.
Yeah.
You know it's him.
Yeah.
But his back is to us.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to Al, and we stay on Al, and music swells, and we hear the Reverend's voice. And then when we see it next, we can see his feet out of the corner of the frame. So we don't see. But I understand what Bullock earlier wanted him out of his store, or the last episode wanted him out of his store, and he has compassion. But what can he do?
You think that's an oversight? Like kind of like how Leia walks right past Chewbacca to hug Rey in The Force Awakens?
Could be. I mean, because I think it comes across strangely.
Why?
I didn't notice it.
Why?
But
He just offered to walk him back to his tent last time.
He did.
It was the last fucking night.
But he was a little annoyed that he was like, he more than Saul, he's like, can we walk you back to your tent? Like, he's a little bit dismayed, but he also wants him out of his store.
But I think that also goes to just show that Bullock isn't really all that,
there's a limit to his
his
generosity.
altruism. He's not really like...
Well, he seems to value people who are composed
Right.
and people who are on the up and up, whatever that means to him.
Right.
I do feel like that probably was not something you were meant to
take away
focus
from
on.
it, but it is something that I noticed.
That scene was more about Al's reaction to the Reverend and less about I guess
Right.
Bullock's not
Right. I guess they just physically had to show that he was leaving.
right.
No,
Or
I
he
think-
had to get by, but it's like
I think
just go.
I think it perfectly fits his character that there's a limit to his compassion. Like like you just said.
It fits his character.
He
but
doesn't have a lot of patience for compassion.
It fits his character, but I think it just reinforces that idea that like there's very few people, even up into including, I guess, who's quote unquote supposed to be the main character. I don't know. I mean, the show starts on him.
Yeah.
Who was the sheriff and who seems to have ideas for lawful goodness or whatever. Even that guy is like, I mean, he's not like Jesus or something. He's
Yeah,
he
and
just bled.
also,
Whatever.
he's been consistently annoyed by the Reverend at
That's true.
several funerals where
That's
the
true.
Reverend is preaching, but also that he can't do anything for the Reverend.
Right.
That's also, the Reverend
And
is
that's- yeah.
pointing towards acting similar to drunk people who he often throws off the street.
That's true.
Who he's talking about bulls' penises in Scripture and falling into like potatoes. Like,
If Saul was walking by, he would have done something.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
He'd have helped
that's
him back
definitely
to his-
Saul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree, it is a very, very striking.
It
He
points
doesn't-
something out about his character.
Al is so sort of messed up by this that he gets hammered drunk.
Yeah, he gets. He gets
For the
good
rest of the episode,
Yeah, he
he's-
gets good and
he's
toasty
pretty
for the rest of
wasted,
that
yeah.
fucking episode.
And
You see him take a big swig
And
straight
he's-
from the bottle.
and
He was
he's-
drinking
he's
it.
slurring too.
Yeah.
He has at least 2 bottles within that episode that you see. I don't know. He gets pretty fucked up.
Yeah, and he's a little bit more chipper, like almost a little bit more. He's still threatening, but he's
in
just
like a mean way.
Yeah,
in a mean
yeah,
way.
yeah.
He like says that funny things, but he doesn't say them drawn out. He says them quickly.
Yes.
All right. In the next scene, Alma's father, Alma, and Sophia and Bullock all eat dinner together
At
Farnham's hotel.
Farnham's Hotel. It's closed off for a private event, and it says something. It's like, go somewhere the fuck else or something on the,
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the little sign.
Elsewhere, go elsewhere is misspelled. I think they forgot the E in elsewhere.
Go elsewhere.
Yeah. But they come in, Richardson and
They have steak, potatoes,
store-bought potatoes,
and
something on the half shell, maybe, I don't know.
no. They have
Whole-boiled carrots.
ribeye
Yeah.
steaks, like whole boiled carrots, and they have brown potatoes or whatever. And it's like that's
That looks pretty good.
like a good meal.
Yeah.
It's like that's not something you really see.
I don't know. He lingers quite a bit.
Yes.
He says, "Your repast awaits your mouth," and then Alma keeps telling him, "No, please go. We're good."
Exactly. God, she doesn't hide it at all, and it's amazing.
she's
she
annoyed
just-
by him.
She just hates him. Well, and then as soon as he walks away, she's like, "He's one of the men who's responsible for Brom's death." It's like that's one of the motherfuckers.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course she would not hide her
Right.
disdain
yeah.
for this guy.
And so then Farnham and Richardson just go around to a hole in the wall where they can observe the entire.
There's just like
dinner.
this weird mesh.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
stuff up.
like a doily or something.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's like partitioning the kitchen from the thing, and he's just staring. through it.
And
at them.
Farnham spots the guy for a huckster.
He does. It's surprising.
He's a cheat, a broad tosser, and a clip, whatever those mean.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But and then his assistant, I don't remember his name. Richardson. His
May I look, Mr. Farnham?
and there's a pretty big pause there before, and you're thinking like, oh, he's gonna say yes, and he's like, yes, as soon as you have a full head of hair.
Yeah, as soon as you're going a full head of hair. And then he goes right back to talking to himself.
It's so fucking mean.
And he wonders whether or not Alma is part of Otis's designs on tricking and gaining money.
If this has been the design the whole time.
Right. Planning to off the guy. And well,
or if he's
Farnham knows, though, that Dan did that.
Maybe. Or I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying maybe he knows that Dan did it. But they're all used to convoluted plans, and so maybe they're thinking
so maybe
like,
all along this guy was supposed to come
happen.
in and sort of back her play.
Or is he trying to cheat his own blood? Can he gull his own daughter?
Right.
Is she
right.
is pigeon or not?
Right.
Probably that. And then we go into the dinner, and Otis kind of ignores Alma and just starts talking to Bullock about her plans.
Yeah.
And Alma takes the one moment where Bullock talks to her to say, "Thank you for acknowledging me."
Yeah.
And I forget what they're going for. They're trying to see what Alma's going to do with the.
Whether or not she's going to leave.
She's going to leave, and she's basically said no. Like, I've told her to leave, and
she's set up for. We've got a proxy here.
Right. She's decided she wants to stay. It's her damn choice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then let's see. Then after dinner, Alma and Sophia look down on a window as Otis Russell and Bullock go on a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this nice little speech where she says,
"It's great.
If we had a kitchen, we'd go to that and we'd gossip while they talked about important stuff."
Basically talking about like what high society is like elsewhere.
Yeah.
And
But also, how they're deciding for her. And she's like, if we didn't hate them,
exactly.
If we didn't hate them too much to be curious, we'd want to know what our fate was.
Exactly.
That's combining several lines. Like,
you
can't ever get the dialogue as perfect as it is.
We'd be curious what they were saying or something like that.
If we didn't hate them so much.
Yeah.
But it's like she's basically, I'm aware that I'm being left out and messed with. And then we go right down to the street, and just like you said, the father says things and then doubles back on him.
Yes.
And he offends Bullock's sense of propriety by saying, you can keep sleeping, you can sleep with my daughter and also with your wife. It's not a big deal. And from a modern perspective, that is a modern perspective. It's not that shocking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay for a father to be like, it's okay. It's okay. He doesn't have to be shocked that his daughter might have an affair with a married man.
Yeah. But Bullock is not about that, even though we're kind of starting to see the situation. But we're kind of starting to see the situation with Bullock and his family.
Yeah.
And it's like,
they kind of go into that.
They've gone into it already.
His brother's.
It's his brother's wife.
His brother,
or whatever, and he died or something.
Yeah, it's his brother's widow and kid.
And so it's like kind of like legally he's had to do this.
Yeah.
Is it a legal thing or is it just like he did the?
It's not a legal thing. It's an honorable thing. He didn't have to marry his daughter. That's biblical.
But what I also mean is that like otherwise, that whole estate and everything, you can't go to a woman. I don't think at this point. Yeah. And so like in order to keep the estate up, you have to do things like this.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I mean,
I don't know if that
probably might be true.
I don't know if it's true either, but
it may be a property thing.
Yeah.
That's a really great point. There is a scene between Saul and Bullock where they actually openly discuss his wife versus how much he likes Alma Garrett.
Right.
And Saul ends on, but she is a very beautiful woman.
I thought he was talking about his wife.
Oh, okay.
But what did he say? He said something about he's living a borrowed life instead of his own.
Right.
He's more comfortable living somebody else's life than his own. And then Saul says, some good lives have been made out of borrowed ones or something like that.
Right.
That was a really butchered summation of what was said, but yeah. But I liked it when I heard it, and it was better worded.
I think that was pretty close. Saul is basically like, stay married.
Yeah.
Is what he's saying. And Bullock isn't saying that he openly says he wants to, what's up, but he clearly really likes Alma.
Yeah.
And,
right.
And this is yet another episode where, you I mean, I guess their attraction is super open.
That's
now.
very
Right, yeah.
obvious.
They're staring at each other across the room every time they're both in a room.
Right. It's not. Yeah.
And the HBO synopsis has let me down, so I'm just going to throw this scene here where Silas Adams and Al Swearengen have their final conversation about Magistrate Clavick, and they settle on the amount of money that Adams would require to kill Magistrate Clavick and end the warrant.
And he says 1,000 to kill the magistrate, 1,000 to get rid of the warrant.
Yeah, and he
he's
says
like,
that's a low price.
That's real low.
Do you really think I'm a fucking monkey?
And then he's like, and then Al says like, what, like 20,000 or something? He's like, yeah, 20,000. That's what I should be getting for something like that.
And then Al has this wonderful little phrase. He goes, "You have to believe that it would be worth more." And so I love the way he says,
Get hundreds of thousands going back and forth.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So it will lead to greater business opportunity.
Yes.
Right.
But it's just like, it's almost like he's hypnotizing Adams and saying, you have to believe that you get more money. Just do the stupid job for nothing.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, that job is, and they have this wonderful roundabout way until they keep saying, maybe he has to die. And then
Maybe he does.
they cut off like all their double talk by saying, he goes, make your offer.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's see. Al sends for Saul, and Saul comes to the gym, and I was thinking,
Yeah, because
violence.
Bullock told on like in his like defensiveness about not wanting to be sheriff, he just blurts out that the only
Yeah.
reason I'm even talking to you is because my partner is with
Fucking the whore.
with Trixie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Al in Swearengen is very insulting,
Yeah.
but he's not very violent.
No.
And you called this last episode, I think, when I asked you to predict what would be the outcome, and you were like, Swearengen will charge more money. And he has this he just lists off in a humiliating way the different things that he could charge for, like anal or regular. And then Saul is like, no, I won't do it.
Yeah.
And he calls Trixie over and it says, you'll pay or she will.
Yeah.
And so he threatens.
That's when he ponies up.
Yeah. And it's really sad. I don't know. But he also has a great thing where he says, all anyone can hope for is someone who they feel won't rob, murder, or kill them.
And then that's when he is basically like talking to Trixie, and it's like, you're gonna sleep with your other kind tonight. Treats her like an animal.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I feel like he's probably foolishly a little bit hurt. Because
Well, but it's the
that's
same
been
thing.
his thing.
It's the same thing with Cy
Yeah.
and Joni, and it's the same thing with Al and Trixie.
Trixie was his favorite.
Yes.
Well,
Or I guess
earlier
it is.
he'd been feeling magnanimous, and he checked on her arm thing, and he's like, you can go visit the child today, but first, and he throws down. He has his pajama onesie with his crotch hair showing through. And it's
Presents
just-
to
So
him.
appetizing.
Yeah. So he's clearly loves Trixie.
Yes. But then, so is the scene right after this? Like
The ending scene.
Saul goes back to the hardware store. That's where Bullock is.
Yeah.
Is that the ending?
No,
No.
we got a little bit more.
Okay. So
It ends in an awkward blowjob that we have to watch.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that. That's an insane scene. They go back to the hardware store, and then that's when Bullock owns up to the fact
Yeah.
that he.
At least he did that.
Yeah, because otherwise he could have just let Saul believe that she was the one who
Right,
gave him
yeah,
up,
yeah.
and then that pretty much ends the
Right. And as
relationship
soon as he
there.
realizes what he's done, he comes clean about
He comes
that.
clean 100% and is just like, no.
Poor fucking judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know me, I'm a fucking hothead and a goddamn idiot.
Yeah.
So at least he owns up to that.
Yeah.
And then I think we return to.
Oh, and then he's going to end up getting that other place. And he tells Saul he needs to go get his own place too, so that
Right.
they can't conduct transactions
Right.
Yeah.
sexual
They
nature
cannot conduct
in-
physical transactions.
inside of the hardware store because it's in their lease.
Yeah.
the
Right. Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we go to this very famous final scene where Al is with Dolly, the prostitute, his replacement for Trixie.
Yes.
And
And he is just
He's sauced. And
he's sauced. He's completely opening up.
He's upset about the Trixie thing. He's upset about the Reverend thing.
He's opening up basically to a complete stranger almost, because this was what Trixie would be there for, and she would give him advice about things, I guess, in a roundabout way or whatever.
Yeah.
And instead, this lady is younger too.
And she's very meek.
And she's very meek.
Didn't he buy her from the same orphanage that he was?
And this is where you find out that he's from an orphanage, and starts, levying all these insults against the lady who was running the orphanage and stuff, and calls her fat and all this other stuff.
Fat bottom Mrs. Anderson.
Yeah. And then this gets you a bigger picture of Al. Yeah. And all the while he's getting this blowjob from the prostitute,
and continually assaulting her, giving her a bottle, telling her to put it down, asking her a question, insulting her for answering,
and then telling her to go slower, faster.
Yeah, and asking her if she has a stagecoach.
You got a stagecoach.
You got a stagecoach to catch. Go slower. And then very charitably tells her at the end, "You don't have to swallow it. You can spit it out."
Yeah.
What a saint!
As always, he's incredibly unappetizing as a lover. He seems like he's just so gross and so demanding and controlling that he doesn't even consider the people he's with in any way.
No, but it's just incredible amount of backstory in this rant that he goes on. Yeah. Which I guess makes sense why he would tell this to her, since they came from the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And his story, it's hard to parse it. Like, I had to listen to it several times before I figured out exactly what he's saying. But he's basically saying that his mother put him at that orphanage.
So she was a prostitute.
Yeah, it's implied, that she was.
Yeah.
And she just left him there, and I don't know. It's what else? What else is in the?
And then he says, "Anyways."
Yeah,
he does say, "Anyways."
And that's the last word of the episode.
Yeah.
But
Excelsior.
What else is there to say about that speech? Just a good.
Well, I mean, the point is that he's hurt by what Trixie is doing to him.
He's had a rough day
because he thinks that they're, again, like, Cy believes in his heart of hearts that him and Joni are meant to be together.
Yeah.
Al thinks that him and Trixie are supposed to be,
well, it's
tight.
It's one of those things where he probably hasn't given it much thought. But now that good thing he's had is threatened.
Yes,
it's she's in his employ,
right? And he's put her on the couch basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it was one of those things that he didn't have to ever address how he felt about it. It was just like, this was our routine, and now our routine's
different.
Messed up, and it's like weird, but
it's not about that,
and I don't like that.
It's about the fact that he has feelings for her, and it's hard to parse that with the fact that she is a sex worker in his employ,
right,
and that he has a history of not knowing how to deal with women.
Yeah.
Only thing he knows how to do is physical violence.
Yeah.
Against, I guess not just women, but everybody, but especially women. And so he's already threatened to kill her before, right? I mean, he's grabbed her by the pussy. He's
smiled at the camera.
He's done all kinds of awful things to her, and then she went and did this, and he doesn't know what else to do because he doesn't know how to be a decent human being. and at this point he honestly can't,
right,
because he's stuck in what he's created himself, which is he's created this empire of which he has to be a monster in order to keep it intact. So he's on the top of this house of cards that he can't really you can't change anything about it now.
I agree with everything you're saying, but he doesn't have to be a monster. Like, I mean,
but I'm talking about in Al's mind.
His mind.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, objectively, he could just not do any of this and just move on with his life, I guess, and be a better person. But in Al's mind, he knows that if he wants things to stay the way they are, as most people do. But he also wants to have this weird relationship with Trixie, but he doesn't understand that she doesn't want that.
It's like foolish of him to think that it could ever work.
It's not going to work. It's never going to work. It's the same thing with Joni. It's never going to work. As long
as there's the threat that he could, choke her out with his boot or something like that.
It's like, of course she wants to get the fuck away.
If he holds that over her, It's never gonna be a, you know.
And this is the most low-key way she can be apart from him, is just on the side talking to this other guy.
Right,
And and actually wanting to have sex with this other guy.
Right,
Because
yeah.
she's showing her affections the way that she knows how to.
How often does that ever happen, I wonder?
What?
That
that
there's
she
someone
does
she
that she
genuinely
seeks
wants
that
to.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it isn't something where
We
it's
haven't
like,
seen it yet. So,
But outside of Al's relationship with Trixie, Al reveals that, like a lot of people in the show, he has a huge amount of trauma in his childhood.
yes.
And that he was literally given up for adoption, and he remembers it.
Right.
And it was his mom just running away and shoving him, and then that he literally goes back to the orphanage where he was given up, and takes women,
Right.
and takes them out to the middle of nowhere,
Yes.
and forces them to be sex slaves.
Yes.
I guess.
Yes. I mean,
and-
that's what he does.
But it's just like, but his psychology is, I don't know. There's a nice moment where the last image is him drinking from a bottle.
Yeah.
And so it kind of maybe mimics a little bit of like all the emphasis on like fellatio or blowjobs. It's just like you feel very sorry for Al, and you
Didn't
feel
he
like
suck his thumb too? Right
he did. Oh,
before?
yeah, he sucked his thumb.
Oh, man.
He's like, you can't. He was
talking about the Reverend and like about.
Oh yeah, one of the first things he said before he starts the speech, he's like, anyway, the Reverend needs to be killed.
Yeah, exactly. We need
Right,
to
yeah.
fucking murder the Reverend.
So it's like
Yeah.
a point of weakness for him. He's
Right.
like, there's a point where he shows compassion, and he has to kill the guy
Yeah.
he feels compassion towards.
Right.
And anyways.
Two beavers slapping logs. You can't keep the gold from me.